Two Peas in a Podcast.
If you've ever thought, why didn't somebody tell me this before I started managing a team? You are in the right place.
Each week we unpack the human stuff that makes or breaks your business without the corporate wank.
This week we're talking about impromptu, because we gave up on the last episode. Full disclosure. Redundancies.
Yeah.
Aren't we?
Shitty one, but timely.
Yeah, and it's something that we've done quite a lot of client work in the last few months, really, and it's definitely not the most favourite part of my role. I think you get to do some of the nice, more motivational stuff.
I think
working with employees in that position.
It's nobody's favourite role in the sense that you wish you didn't have to do it, because ultimately, whatever role you're playing as part of that process, there's a human being at the end of it that is losing their job, and we don't know how they feel about it, but often they don't feel particularly great about it, and they go through that whole curve of emotions. But I find it really interesting that you say that, because I think the difference that makes the difference when it comes to a redundancy situation, so when the job no longer exists and you have to move someone on, is how it's handled.
Absolutely.
Not just whether you put in somebody like me to provide what we would call outplacement support, so to mop people up, put them back together, and then help give them some practical advice as to how they can transition out of that job and into something else. That's always going to feel like the right thing to do and the nice thing to do if budgets allow, at whatever level. We could talk about that. But actually having somebody handle the compliance and the process aspect that sees the value in empathy and sensitivity, as well as putting the process in place and managing it, I think is the difference that makes the difference.
Yeah, well, it's putting the person at the heart of it and teaching and treating them in as much of a dignified way as you possibly can.
Yeah, and we've seen it done badly.
Yes, we have.
It's sort of done very badly.
Yeah.
So, and actually, that sucks. That sucks for everybody.
Do you know what it's about for me? If a business is in a really unfortunate position where they have to lose people, where they have to reduce headcount for whatever reason, that's a really sad state of affairs. But doing it in, like you say, the most empathetic way and the most dignified way possible, in terms of the way you consult with employees, the way you keep their own mental health at the forefront and at the heart of your considerations in relation to the process and your decisions as much as possible, the employee will come through it less traumatized than they would do if you don't pay due consideration to the influence that process has. That was a really ineloquent way of saying if you fuck it up, you generally
you harm people.
Yeah, you do harm people.
Yeah,
and actually that's something that we have seen fairly recently.
What does fucking it up look like to you?
I think it means applying a process. So redundancies, and we're talking here about individual redundancies, so less than 20. So we're not talking about collective redundancies in big organisations. We work with small employers up to 150 employees max. So whenever we've done redundancy processes or projects before, they have always involved less than 20 people.
Yeah.
So it's always been about individual consultation. And especially in smaller organisations, I think employers mess it up when, one, they don't follow the legal process, so they don't even have enough respect for the employee to make sure they understand their own legal obligations towards the employee.
Yeah.
Or when they do understand their legal obligations in terms of following a due process, consultation process, but they don't necessarily care enough about doing that in a meaningful way.
Yeah.
So a redundancy process generally involves putting somebody at risk or putting a role at risk of redundancy. So notifying the employee in that role, or in those roles, that a role has become at risk.
That there's a chance. There's a
Yes.
chance this role isn't viable anymore, and you're supposed to do that pretty much straight away, aren't you? As soon
Yeah.
as you know.
Yes, you are very good.
Oh, thank you. I picked up a few things along the way. I do listen to you.
So you're bringing the employee into the conversation straight away, and that's sometimes really difficult to do, because if you're not sure, you don't want to worry employees unduly.
No.
You don't want to cause instability or disruption unnecessarily. But at the same time, employees have the right to know as soon as an employer starts making decisions or considering reducing headcount or removing roles from their organisation. So I think, yes, absolutely putting them at risk. Putting those roles at risk as soon as possible, and then moving into what we call a consultation process. So that might involve 3 consultations, it might involve 4, it might involve 5, it might be over a 2-week period, it might be over a 6-week period. It entirely depends on the number of roles that you're making redundant, the reason you're making them redundant, whether there's a restructure element of it as well, or whether it's a point blank reduction in headcount. The complexities of it, the length of service of the employees involved,
Age.
No, age is dependent on is a factor that's that's relevant to potential redundancy amounts. So,
yeah.
So what a redundancy package would be, but you absolutely wouldn't bring agents.
No, sorry, that wouldn't be one of the reasons to get rid of people. Oh my God.
Really impressed me about 3 minutes ago. That was actually nothing.
Oh, I've done it. No, I meant that though. Yeah, in terms of what you might be looking at in terms of the calculations and things. There's lots of different things to consider, isn't there?
Yes, there is.
Yeah.
But in terms of the length of the process, how many consultations you have involved, that's dependent on all the other factors I've just said, not the age of the employee, full disclosure.
Disclaimer. Love that.
So there's a process that's strictly governed in law and policy, but there should be a meaningful element of it, right? That it's about having regular conversations with the employee. When we talk about a consultation process, what it means is a series of conversations, formal conversations with the employee, where you explore whether there are any other ways that you can avoid having to make a role redundant, and to get the employees' feedback, views, thoughts, ideas as to how that might be able to happen. And once you've got those ideas, reviewing them, interrogating them, seeing if they're plausible,
meaningfully.
Yeah, and I've seen it work before. I was involved in a redundancy process about 6 months ago, where 3 employees that all did the same role, and we were reducing them to 2 roles, and they all got together and said, if we all reduce our hours by it was 15 hours each a week, so they were all prepared to go to part-time to make sure that they all get to keep their jobs. And that's a win for the employer. It's the same
in advance as the employer. And I think, having run them with HR support myself, but also being on the sidelines seeing them delivered here, it's where the employer assumes that it's open and shut and feels like those consultations are steps in a process, as opposed to what it says, actual consultation. It's a tick box, that they miss out on so many opportunities. One, to find out if there is genuinely something like that, something quite practical. But also, we know when people are in shock, when they have had bad news broken to them, depending on their own level of commitment, investment in the role, personal circumstances, all manner of other things, that the one thing you can do for somebody is to give them agency. And to give them a voice. So those consultation, even without offering anything else, best practice on top and alongside the process, by weaving that approach in, and actually, even if in your mind it's absolutely open and shut, doing those consultations meaningfully, you're giving them that. You're giving them an opportunity to be heard.
Yeah, a forum to voice their views and be heard.
And they might not take it. We've seen that, right? Some of them are absolutely like, nah, I've got nothing.
Yeah.
That's okay.
And it absolutely is. And we've had, because I've probably dealt with 4 different redundancy projects, unique redundancy projects in the last 3 or 4 months. And you do have the employees that move to the acceptance stage quite quickly. And then they turn around to you and say, I don't want to have to do my last consultation.
Yes.
I know where this is going. I've accepted it.
Yeah.
do I have to? And that's when you can make a decision as to whether the process is, you don't have to tick the box for the sake of ticking the box. If they decide they want to opt out of the process, again, get that in writing to make sure that it's really clear that that's their decision. But you don't want to put them through a tick box exercise because it's your obligation to do so as an employer, again, without considering their needs and what's best for them.
Yeah.
So it keeps the process keeps the conversations open until such a time comes that you have to make a final decision.
Yeah.
And like you said, even if the final decision is what you thought it was going to be at the beginning of the process and nothing has been presented that could give you the opportunity to change the end outcome, at least the employee has got to the end of it and has felt like they've had the forum for their views to be heard. They've had the opportunity to rant, to cry, to scream, to get resentful, to put ideas forward, to make suggestions. And I think, like you said, from a psychological perspective, that's all they really need in that situation, if the business decision is inevitable.
Yeah, absolutely. I think for me, fucking it up speaking as an ops director now, so purely like not thinking about being a peas in a pod person that delivers outplacement support and career transition coaching, just purely as an ops director with a low level knowledge of HR, which is what I would position myself as, in a very similar capacity to most of our clients. For me, fucking up is assuming that redundancy is clear cut and you know enough to be able to carry out that process on your own. And the reason I say that is because that might be the case, but I have heard enough conversations and been part of enough conversations during redundancy projects to know that there are a number of things that you don't know. And I would implore anybody that finds themselves in this awful situation, usually because they don't necessarily have the means financially to be able to continue employing the person, that even in that situation, you find the budget to bring in somebody that understands not only that process, but also the things that can apply that you don't even know that can apply. And I don't want to get into all of those complexities because we haven't got the time or anything like that. But there are lots of other things that can show up, aren't there, during a redundancy process where actually maybe you've not pulled people that you should have pulled, or maybe your criteria for making redundancy isn't as sound as you think it is,
or you're still recruiting for other roles within the organisation, or you've got an entire pool of self-employed people that are still working for you. You're right. The stuff that shows that. And actually, the business rationale, which is what you were effectively just referring to, is a key area where employers haven't perhaps thought it through. So when I first speak to a client and they tell me they need to make roles redundant, I say, right, I need to understand the business rationale. I need to understand what criteria you have considered, reviewed and discussed that have brought you to the conclusion that you need to either restructure your department within your organisation or reduce your headcount. What figures are you looking at? You're telling me that the business is financially struggling. You will have figures to back that up. That all needs to go into a business rationale. An employee needs to understand why their role is at risk, is being put at risk. They need to understand what's going on with the business and why this is happening to them. So that upfront piece of work to document the business rationale and the details within it is a really, really key piece of work. What sometimes I have found in the past is that employers conflate performance management issues.
Great word.
Thanks. Got it from you. I've used it. It's your new most overused word, conflate.
I'm going to go back to marinade. Sorry. Carry on.
Conflate performance management issues with an employee with redundancy issues.
Yes.
So I've seen this in the past with the redundancy situation, So I've seen this in the past where because an employee is underperforming, they want to make the role redundant.
Well, there's no better way to avoid a difficult conversation. Crack on. I say. No, I don't.
Or
second disclaimer, don't do that.
No, what you should do is join Boss Mate Bootcamp, where we teach you how to have those difficult conversations and to manage those performance matters.
Smooth.
Direct. So you absolutely need to be able to identify as an employer from the outset. Are you dealing with a performance management issue, or are you dealing with a genuine business need to reduce your headcount or restructure your team or your business,
Yeah.
regardless of the performance issues that are going on within it.
In my mind, there's a key indicator of that, and it's whether you're already planning to redeploy all of the responsibilities to other people in this supposedly redundant role after that person's gone.
There we go. You are picking up on it. Yeah. That role's responsibilities need to genuinely not be needed by the business anymore. Like you said, not be redistributed to other existing staff members. And again, there's some technicalities in that. So it's another reason why you should absolutely get HR advice before you start any redundancy process. So yeah, I think investing in that support, making sure that you understand your own business rationale, that you can communicate that to an employee really confidently in an at-risk meeting, making sure you're doing them the courtesy of making sure you're following not just your legal obligations, but you're doing that meaningfully throughout that consultation process, that they feel heard by the end of it. And then we move on to what we can do afterwards, how we can help afterwards, instead of, okay, ultimately we've come to a decision that the end outcome is still dismissal. And then you're letting them go. And there's some ways that we can help employers bridge that transition, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that by being really clear about the rationale, we're starting that process right by saying, you might not like this, but at least you can understand it. And then we can help people move through to acceptance quicker, which means we can start future pacing, which is what we're talking about when we talk about bringing in support afterwards. So you might bring that in and dovetail support in for people whilst they're in the process. And some people bring that in earlier and some people bring it in once decisions made. There's various different best practice approaches. So you could do some sort of big stuff around welfare and well-being during the process, so to run alongside that. But what we tend to see, especially in smaller organizations where budgets might be a bit smaller or a bit tighter, is career transition support. 1, 2, 3 coaching sessions, maybe if you are unfortunately having to make a number of redundancies, a small workshop on practical things like making sure you have a CV that sells you, making sure that you understand how to articulate your skills, making sure you understand how to navigate the new AI recruitment practices and processes that we're seeing, and you can actually get through processes, making sure that you are feeling confident to be able to show up and do an interview. So everybody's going to have slightly different worries. You can put on stuff that applies to everybody, and we tend to see that as the bare minimum, really, that people come in and say, we'll run CV workshops or we'll do that. For me, that's minimum, because everybody's career transition needs are going to be very individual. I'd rather you kind of spend the same money on a couple of individualized interventions myself, personally, I would always say. But if people feel like at least they understand, they're going to be more ready to accept that help, even if it's offered, because just because it's offered doesn't mean they're going to take it. When we do large scale outplacement, I don't actually think that's something we lead with very often as a business. We sometimes are brought in as a provider to large companies where there have been collective redundancies. Just because we haven't managed that process doesn't mean we don't come in and help, as I say, put people back together afterwards and run the various sessions. And you find people in all sorts of different places emotionally when you do that, but being able to provide something, one, it feels like the right thing to do if you can do it, the kind thing to do, it can make a huge difference to people, but it's also strategically and reputationally really important reasons to bring somebody in to support people through redundancy, because actually we're hoping that redundancies is a time for the business where they might be getting smaller, but we're hoping they're going to repair and be able to grow and have a period of growth at some point. They may well want to increase headcount in other areas of the business that aren't affected by the same redundancies. So their employer reputation can also be adversely impacted by handling a redundancy and an offboarding of any kind improperly or callously. So at the worst extreme. So I think it allows an employer, or a business founder, to feel a little bit better. Because let's not forget how hard this is actually. If you are in a business, especially when you set up yourself and you have to lose people, yes, of course, first and foremost, we're worried about the employees affected. But I'm also really worried about the business owner in that situation, because this is going to affect them. It's usually something they don't want to have to do, they feel terrible about, and they have to build back better afterwards and deal with the people who remain. And that's a whole other podcast around reforming as a group, going back as a team and going, okay, we've been through something quite quite significant and quite traumatic, and we're the ones that are now left.
Yeah.
They may feel worried. They may feel that they're not stable. So there's all sorts of things going on. And as a business leader, that's going to affect you as a manager or as a founder. So I think getting some support for that as well, and acknowledging that there might be some coaching or support they need to get through this process as well. And that's something I've seen you provide as part of the transactional, process management. You're there as much as anything as a sounding board, and you're absorbing some of that. And that probably isn't something that ever shows up on an invoice, but it's happening. And I think that's another reason for bringing people in as well. So I think there's a role for both of us to play in that situation. But as a minimum, I would say, don't ever assume you can do this unsupported for all the reasons we've spoken about.
Yeah, I think you're right. And like you said, the long-term strategic reputation that you have as a business owner, I think if you don't care for any other reason, people just aren't going to want to come. I mean, ultimately, you're probably letting go of good people with skill sets that at some point in the future you might want to get back on board, or we've seen be requested back on a self-employed capacity. If you've lost that trust, that employee, because you're more concerned about getting the process done quickly because it feels so uncomfortable for you as a manager, because you're not getting good advice and support by a HR consultancy team, then you're screwing up relationships that didn't necessarily need to be screwed up.
No.
And it's going to make it harder to then rebuild, like you said, if you want to bring these people back in the future, or you want to be able to recruit new, fresh talent. Yeah. I mean, the problem is online feedback is everywhere, like you always say.
Yeah.
And
Glassdoor.
employees, they make their views known, and it's really sad. It's really, really sad when employers have to make redundancies in the first place. It's another thing sadder for us when we watch them mess up the process, or rush it, or not do it meaningfully, or not give that investment piece to make sure that that employee is able to then move on and look forward. Because you're just making it so much harder for both you and the employee than you needed it to. Yeah. What is an already really difficult situation, you're making 10 times worse by not handling it properly, all aspects.
So it seems like the overriding message is, however teeny tiny your budget is, get some support and advice for at least the aspects of the process that you can. The long-term investment, like you said, if you're only looking at it from a legal and a financial perspective, but also from a reputational one. Yeah. I think it's unquantifiable, but it's worth the investment. Yeah. Okay. All right. Sad subject area. Sad subject area, but probably worth it. And if there's one or two business leaders that hear this and they're starting to think about whether they might be in this position, then I'd rather they hear it than didn't hear it, so that they can start maybe thinking about some of the stuff that isn't front of mind for them. And we give a whole hour's free consultation. Oh, there we are. So we're good at pitching today. Who even are we? Your That's true, though, isn't it? That is true. You do just give us a shout. Sounding board. Yeah, I'm very happy really happy to jump on a call and have a chat if you're a business owner in this position. Yeah. Okay, that's it for this week. So don't forget to subscribe so you never miss an episode, and share this podcast with your network. Follow us on our socials at PieUp Consulting. Join us next time, and until then, remember, people problems don't fix themselves, and healthy cultures never happen by accident. See you next Tuesday.